Hello everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to my last video of 2020. It's crazy how fast and yet slow this year has passed, and now we're on the final day of 2020 and it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, this video is going to be my first TBR of the new year as well as my last video of the old year. It's like a kind of weird juxtaposition, I guess, but this video is my January TBR, and it feels kind of weird because on the last few TBRs I always had so many books that I felt like I absolutely needed to get to, that I always felt like not stressed, because I don't want to feel stressed ever with reading, so not a negative type of stress, but I was always so not scared but nervous that I wouldn't manage to read all books or whatever. It always felt almost overwhelming with how many books I had on my TBR, is what I wanted to say. And on this TBR I'm just kind of really relaxed. There's not that many books on the TBR. I mean, it's gonna look like a lot of books because there's a lot of rereads, but I do rereads very quickly, and also with the rereads I'm gonna hold up the entirety of the series, because if I feel like it I'm gonna reread the entirety of the series. But if I only feel like reading one book, then I'm only gonna read one book. So, you know, it's just like weird. But anyway, let's get into my TBR for January of 2021. And let's start with a series that I have already started rereading on a whim in December. I am halfway through the first book. I'm really enjoying my reread so far. This is part of the rereads that I want to do for one of my reading goals, and if you want to know what those reading goals are, I will leave my video down below and up there. But the reread is of the Hydron Chronicles by Jennifer Fallon. I am currently rereading the first book, which is Wolfblade, and I intend to at least read book 2, which is Warrior, in January, and maybe even get to book 3, but who knows, gotta be honest. I might also pick up the English copies of these books. I don't know yet. I've only ever read them in German before, like aside from the first book. The first book I do already own in English. And yeah, this series is an adult high fantasy series, and it's kind of as if like Sansa Stark was the main character of A Game of Thrones. So you follow Mala Wolfblade, who is the young sister of the High Prince of Hydria, so like the ruler of Hydria. And for reasons her brother probably won't get an heir, and so she's like a prime pawn within the chess that is courtly politics. And so you follow her from this very naive, starry-eyed young princess to being a very conniving, cold bitch, gotta be honest. And it's just an amazing series. I'm enjoying my reread so much so far, and I just love like the development of Mala Wolfblade as a character. She's like so good, just so good, because neither at the beginning nor at the end is she a character that I like, but she's just so impressive. So yeah, I'm gonna reread this. Then I also want to continue on with my reread of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. This of course is a middle grade series written by Rick Riordan, and we follow Percy Jackson, who one day finds out that he's a demigod, so that one of his parents is a Greek god. And I have reread the first 2 books so far in 2020, so I want to continue on at least with book 3, which is The Titan's Curse, and then just see how I'm feeling, but I'm not pressed about finishing my reread in January. And then the last reread I have is a buddy read with Aoife from Words of Clover, and that is a buddy read of Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Merrily, which is the first book in the Seven Watchers series, which kind of is a family generational chronicles of like this family living in ancient Ireland. And this first book is a retelling of the Six Swans, and we follow Sorka, who is the youngest child of this Irish chieftain, and she has 6 older brothers. However, when her father remarries a sorceress, those 6 brothers get turned into swans, and it is up to Sorka to, you know, turn them back. And how she does that is by knitting like shirts made out of nettles, I think. And while she does that, she is not allowed to utter a single sound. And so we follow her through the years as she does that. And so yeah, I'm really excited for this buddy read because I've talked about it a lot. Juliet Merrily used to be one of my absolutely favorite authors. Still a staple on my TBRs is the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I am trying to finish Knife of Dreams, which is book 11, still in 2020. However, if I cannot manage to do that, I will finish Knife of Dreams in January. And then I also want to pick up, I think the 12th book is The Gathering Storm in January of 2020, and this is the first book that was written by Brandon Sanderson, or co-written by Brandon Sanderson. I'm not sure how exactly they did that. But yeah, so that's it for the Wheel of Time stuff on my TBR, and now I actually only have 2 books left before we get to talking about my TBR charts. The first of those 2 books is of course the buddy read for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries. And what this book club is all about is shining a spotlight on amazing authors within the adult high fantasy genre that just happen to be women. Because for some reason people still think women cannot write adult high fantasy and cannot write great adult high fantasy. But the read for January, which I'm very happy about because I would have read it anyway, because I finally want to read this book because I've heard so many great things about it, and it actually was on a poll before but it didn't win, and so I just put it on the poll again because I make all the rules, and if I want to put the book on multiple polls then I'm gonna do that. But anyway, that book is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. And I don't know that much about this book aside from the fact that I think it's military fantasy, it's East Asian inspired, and we follow 2 perspectives. One is a mother and the other one is her son. And also that it's apparently heartbreaking. Those are the things I know about this book. I am so excited to get to it. You will of course know all my thoughts at the end of January because I will upload a review to this. I'm thinking of starting live streams for the buddy reads like at the end of every month. But I gotta be honest, I'm just way too scared to then sit there all alone to start a live stream. So maybe I'll wait until I have a few more subscribers before I do any live streams. But I'm probably gonna do a vlog while reading this book. So yeah, I'm excited to finally pick it up. And then the last book before my TBR charts is the only new release on this TBR, because I gotta be honest, usually unless I'm really excited for a new release, it's by an author that I just love reading books by, or it's a really anticipated sequel. I'm not that like pressed getting to new releases right away because hardcovers are expensive and they cost 3 times the amount of what I would pay if I waited for paperbacks, which I can usually get earlier in Austria than, you know, you can get them in the US after hardcovers. Usually I don't have to wait an entire year before the paperback is published. That is what I mean. Because I can usually get like a UK edition or something. But anyway, because of that, I'm usually not that pressed of getting to a new release right away. However, with this new release, I know that I can get the paperback right away because the paperbacks are published in Austria right away. And that new release is A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Camera, which is the last book and the 3rd book in the Cursebreaker series. I wasn't too much of a fan of the 2nd book. I thought the Cursebreakers should have been just a standalone with A Curse So Dark and Lonely, but I still want to see this trilogy to the end. It's after all just the 3rd book, it's a YA, it's gonna be an easy read, and it's coming out in January. It's actually coming out on January 26th, and usually if there's only 5 days left of the month, I wouldn't put a new release on my TBR, but as I said, it's a YA, it's gonna be an easy read. So yeah, that was it for the books that I have on my TBR outside of my TBR charts, and now let's get into my TBR charts. Let's start with my usual normal TBR chart. I have in here all of the books of my physical TBR. So usually I would pick 3 books out of this TBR chart. I'm just gonna pick all 3 of them right away and then choose one of them, but I think within 2021 I'm gonna choose 2 of them to read within the month, because I do, after all, want to get to a TBR 0. So yeah, we gotta read some more for that to happen, because I have 30 books left on my physical TBR. And the first book that I picked from my TBR chart is Brasinger by Christopher Paolini, which is the third book in the inheritance cycle. And by the way, I find it really confusing now that there's two well-known fantasy series within the adult fantasy genre now that's like some name with inheritance, and I always mix up N.K. Jemisin's Inheritance trilogy with Christopher Paolini's Inheritance cycle. It's so confusing. But anyway, I actually don't feel that intimidated by my TBR yet, so maybe I will finally read the third book in the Inheritance cycle. Next, the second book is Das Kartengeheimnis by Jo Steingarter, which would translate to The Card Secret, I think. And yeah, I think I might also be interested in reading this. Jo Steingarter is the author of one of my favorite childhood books, which was Sophie's World. And also it would be fitting since I do want to read more translated and like non-American UK-centric work within 2021. And this is a Norwegian author or a Swedish author, one or the other. I'm not sure right now. The third book was a classic, and that was Robinson Crusoe by Danielle Defoe. And I gotta say, of the three books that I picked, this one is probably the one I am least interested in so far. Although maybe because I'm gonna read 2 books per month now from my TBR chart, should we pick a fourth option? Like, let's do this. Let's be spontaneous and do that. So the fourth option is gonna be this little one right here. The fourth option was Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And I gotta say, I still feel the first 2 books, so Brasinger and The Card Secret, the most. But like, if I do that, if I only read the non-classics of my TBR, then I'm just gonna be stuck with a lot of classics by the end of the year, which by the way, most of my physical TBR is classics. So maybe I should put a classic in there. Moving on to my second TBR chart. This is my series TBR chart, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick a series that is unfinished on my shelves from this TBR chart, and then I'm gonna read the next book in the series or finish the series if the next book is the last book. So yeah, let's pick a series. And the series is Eon by Alison Goodman. The second book is Iona. I don't remember that much of the series. I mostly remember that it's an East Asian inspired series but written by a white author. I was still interested enough though that I do want to read the second book because there's just like one second book. It's a duology. It's gonna be easy. So yeah, this is the series I'm gonna finish in January. And then we're going to introduce this last and third TBR chart. And I talked about it again in my reading goals, maybe. Did I talk about it in my reading goals? I'm not sure. But I have a lot of books on my TBR that I'm really interested in reading, but that I always feel like there's other books that I'm just as interested in reading, but that I need to read. And so what ends up happening, I'm sure every reader is familiar with that, is that a lot of books that I'm actually really interested in and that I wanna read, but that I just never have a specific reason to read right now, just end up not being read for years. And I am sick of that, so I put almost all of my TBR from Goodreads that's like not already on my physical TBR or anything, or that's like not yet published, into one little box right here, and I'm gonna pull a book per month from this box, and yeah, we'll see what I'll read from the books that I really want to read. And we have The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. And this is probably one of the few books in this box that I still know what it's about, that I even know what the genre is. Because like a few of the books from my Goodreads TBR have been on the TBR for years. So there's a high chance that I'll pull books from this and I'll just be like, I cannot even tell you which genre this is. I maybe cannot even tell you whether or not it's poetry, whether it's a play, or whether it's prose. But this book right here is a kind of fantasy romance, not fantasy romance, romance fantasy, I think. It's a high fantasy, an adult high fantasy, with a heavy focus on romance. And we follow our main character, whose name I have forgotten, and she wants to be a sorceress. However, in this world, women aren't allowed to be sorceresses, but their powers are kind of bound, I think, because the only thing they get used for is basically as baby bearing machines, and like the only thing they have to do once their power is bound is marry, and like something like that. It was something like that. I cannot remember exactly what it was about. But yeah, I'm excited to read it. Also, this book is at my bookstore, so I won't have any difficulties getting it. And it's also really pretty, let's be honest. It's like really pretty. So this was the last one of the books that I now have on my January TBR. It did end up being quite a few books. Like, there is a bit of a stack right here next to me. And yeah, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. Tell me in the comments down below what you plan on reading for the first year of 2020. Because of course, kind of first books, just like last books, are kind of tricky, I feel like, because you want to start off the year right. And so yeah, all the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club are also in the description box down below, so go and check those out as well. And I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!